7,300 warships appeared at the edge of the Sol system. A force so large it bent sensors and blocked out the stars. The Galactic Coalition had run the simulations 1,000 times. Earth would fall in 11 minutes. No planetary shields. No visible defense fleet. No weapons powerful enough to matter. Humanity had been labeled harmless. As the invasion fleet advanced, Earth finally transmitted a message. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. You are entering a contested system. Turn back. We will not fire first. Laughter echoed across command decks. The order was given to proceed. Then the first ships vanished. No explosions. No debris. Just empty space where entire squadrons had been. Jump drives failed. Time fractured. Gravity twisted like a living thing. The invaders never saw a human warship. But they felt Earth watching them. 12 hours later, the galaxy received the impossible report. Out of 7,300 ships, only 13 returned. And every surviving commander told the same story. Earth never chased them. Earth never hunted them. Earth simply decided who was allowed to leave. The vote to invade Earth was not born from hatred or fear. It was born from convenience. Inside the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Coalition, more than 300 species watched Sol's star rotate silently in a projection of mapped space. Compared to the glowing clusters of fortified systems and hyperlane nexuses, Earth's territory looked empty. One yellow star. 8 planets. No empire. No tribute network. No history of interstellar conquest. Humanity had joined the galactic stage late and quietly. Coalition analysts presented their findings with clinical certainty. Humans traded fairly. They honored borders. They avoided escalation even when provoked. Their military expenditures were modest by galactic standards, their fleet numbers unimpressive. No aggressive expansion. No preemptive strikes. No recorded use of planet-killer weapons. To the Coalition, these were not virtues. They were weaknesses. Sol sat astride 3 emerging hyperlane corridors, perfect for logistics, shipyards, and staging grounds. Taking Earth would shorten supply routes by years. It would also send a message to other developing species: neutrality was not protection. The proposal passed without a single dissenting vote. After all, who would defend them? The human Stellar Defense Force, what little intelligence the Coalition had, consisted mostly of patrol craft and aging cruisers. There were no massive orbital fortresses, no star-breaking cannons, no visible planetary shield grid. Earth's surface radiated with civilian traffic, not military readiness. One commander summarized the consensus bluntly. Humans are not warriors. They are survivors who never learned when to stop hiding. The invasion plan was labeled Operation Swift Silence. 7,300 ships were assigned to the task, more than enough to overwhelm any possible resistance. The fleet included dreadnoughts, carrier arcs, kinetic bombardment platforms, and suppression vessels designed to pacify a planet without destroying its infrastructure. Earth was to be taken intact. The Coalition did not want extinction. They wanted ownership. As fleets mobilized, the analysts reviewed historical data one final time. Humanity's wars, though brutal, were old. Primitive. Confined to their own world. Their interstellar record was spotless. No genocides. No system-level annihilations. No evidence of large-scale strategic doctrine. Nothing that suggested preparation for a war like this. What the Coalition never questioned was why. Why a species capable of reaching the stars had never attempted domination. Why their military technology seemed deliberately understated. Why their shipyards produced fewer vessels than their economy could easily sustain. The assumption was simple: humans feared conflict. So when the last approval sigil flashed green across the assembly chamber, no one noticed the small annotation buried in the human intelligence file, dismissed as cultural trivia. A single line, translated poorly from an old Terran strategic doctrine. The most effective defense is the one your enemy never sees. By the time the invasion fleet jumped for Sol, the Coalition still believed they were walking into an undefended system. They never considered that Earth had already decided, long ago, how invasions would end. The moment the Coalition fleet exited hyperspace, every command deck expected alarms. None came. Sol was quiet. Sensors swept across the system in widening cones, cataloging planets, moons, and traffic lanes. Earth orbited its star in open visibility, blue and unshielded. No energy barriers shimmered around it. No battle formations moved to intercept the invasion force. A handful of small human vessels altered course and withdrew, broadcasting civilian transponder codes. To the Coalition admirals, it looked like confirmation. They had arrived before Earth could react. Fleet Command ordered a full-spectrum scan. There were no hidden dreadnoughts behind the gas giants. No mass drivers embedded in moons. No minefields detectable by standard arrays. Even Earth's orbital infrastructure appeared civilian: habitats, shipyards, relay platforms, all lightly armed at best. One officer laughed openly. "This is a garden world," he said. "Not a fortress." As the Armada advanced inward, Earth's planetary networks finally came alive. Communication bursts spiked across every known frequency: radio, laser-tight beam, neutrino pulse, quantum entanglement relays. The signal was unmistakably human in origin, cleanly encoded, universally addressed. Fleet Command prepared for surrender terms. What they received was neither surrender nor defiance. The message was short, measured, almost polite. Unidentified military force. You have entered the Sol system without clearance. This system is under human protection. We advise you to alter course and depart immediately. We will not fire first. The bridge of the flagship fell silent. No threats. No ultimatums. No demonstration of force. Just advice. Several Coalition species found the phrasing unsettling. Others dismissed it instantly. "They're stalling," one admiral scoffed. "Buying time for evacuation." Another laughed. "Fire first? With what?" Command ran probability models in real time. Best case scenario, Earth attempted orbital resistance and was neutralized within minutes. Worst case scenario, prolonged occupation. At no point did any simulation predict significant fleet losses. Fleet Command transmitted a single response. Human authorities. This system is now under Coalition jurisdiction. Stand down all military assets and prepare for compliance. Earth replied immediately. No emotional modulation. No rhetoric. We acknowledge your statement. This is your final warning. That was it. No countdown. No mobilization detected. No visible change in Earth's posture. The Coalition commanders interpreted the silence as fear. Orders were issued to advance to low planetary orbit. Carrier groups began launching suppression craft. Planetary assault vessels aligned their bombardment vectors, not to destroy, but to intimidate. Then something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors flickered. Not alarms. Not damage reports. Absence. A destroyer squadron on the fleet's outer perimeter, 12 ships, simply stopped existing on the tactical display. No energy surge preceded it. No residual radiation followed. One moment they were there. The next, space folded closed like nothing had ever occupied it. Command demanded confirmation. None came. Before the fleet could process the anomaly, a second cluster vanished, then a third. Still, Earth remained silent. And for the first time since the invasion began, Coalition Command realized something deeply unsettling. Humanity had not warned them because it was afraid. Humanity had warned them because it was being fair. At first, Fleet Command assumed a sensor fault. Coalition instruments were among the most reliable in the galaxy, redundant, layered, cross-verified by independent species technologies. Entire civilizations had trusted these systems with the survival of their homeworlds. They did not simply fail. Yet the tactical display insisted otherwise. 12 destroyers from the 3rd Suppression Wing had vanished without warning. No debris field. No thermal bloom. No gravitational shockwave. Just a smooth absence where mass and energy had been moments before. Rerun the scan, Fleet Command ordered. The scan returned the same result. Empty space. A second squadron disappeared less than a minute later. This time, navigation telemetry froze mid-transmission, as if the ships had attempted to report something and been cut off at the source. Engineers monitored every frequency band, every exotic particle channel. There was no sign of an attack. No weapons discharge. No hostile energy signature. No indication of targeting systems locking on. The Coalition fleet slowed its advance, formations tightening instinctively. Dreadnoughts rotated to cover sectors that moments earlier had been deemed irrelevant. Carrier groups recalled their strike craft, confusion rippling through command hierarchies. Still, Earth said nothing. A third disappearance followed, this one closer to the core of the formation. A heavy cruiser group, armored to survive direct planetary bombardment, winked out of existence in perfect silence. Panic crept in quietly. Not the screaming kind. The disciplined, restrained fear of professionals realizing their assumptions were wrong. Fleet Command ordered an emergency hyperspace readiness check. Jump drives across the Armada spun up, then stalled. Power readings fluctuated wildly, as if the very fabric of local space resisted being torn open. Drive lock confirmed, an engineer reported. We can't jump. Not safely. That was when the admirals understood the truth. This was not a battle. It was an environment. The Sol system itself was hostile, not through force, but through design. Space around the fleet behaved differently. Distances subtly warped. Time readings disagreed by fractions of a second between nearby ships. Gravity vectors tugged in directions that made no astrophysical sense. The more the fleet maneuvered, the worse it became. Attempts to fire probe drones ended in failure. The drones crossed invisible thresholds and vanished, just like the ships. No explosion. No signal decay. One frame of telemetry, then nothing. Earth remained motionless. Human traffic continued in distant orbits, following precise, safe corridors. Civilian ships passed through regions that would have annihilated Coalition vessels, as if guided by an unseen map. The implication was horrifying. These were not random traps. They were selective. Command tried again to hail Earth, this time not with demands, but questions. The message never received a reply. Instead, a new phenomenon appeared on sensors, zones of absolute certainty. Areas where mathematical prediction collapsed, where probability itself seemed to narrow toward a single outcome. More ships vanished. Not in clusters now, but individually. A frigate drifting too far off formation. A carrier adjusting position by a fraction too much. Each mistake was punished instantly and without spectacle. The Coalition fleet was being dismantled with surgical indifference. And then, at last, a realization spread through the command network, quiet, devastating, undeniable. Earth had not fired a single weapon. There had been no attack to retaliate against. The humans had done something far worse. They had turned the battlefield into a filter. And only now did the invaders begin to understand the purpose of the warning they had ignored. Once you enter Sol uninvited, space itself decides whether you deserve to exist there. The turning point came not with another disappearance, but with understanding. Coalition science officers, desperate, frightened, brilliant, began abandoning traditional combat analysis. There were no firing arcs to map, no weapon signatures to isolate. Instead, they studied the space between their ships. And what they found shattered every accepted doctrine of warfare. Sol was not defended by fleets. It was defended by architecture. The system had been quietly engineered over centuries, its gravitational landscape sculpted with impossible precision. Planetary masses had been subtly altered. Asteroids repositioned. Microsingularities anchored far beyond sensor range. None of it registered as hostile, because none of it was hostile. Until intent was introduced. The first breakthrough came when a xenophysicist noticed a pattern. Every vanished ship had crossed an invisible boundary after issuing an aggressive maneuver command. Not after firing. Not after locking weapons. After deciding to advance. Human technology, it appeared, did not respond to action. It responded to intent. The so-called empty regions of space were laced with quantum-stabilized gravity wells, dormant, passive, undetectable by conventional scans. They remained inert to traffic flagged as civilian, diplomatic, or retreating. But when a vessel's systems resolved hostile trajectories, those same regions activated instantly. Not as explosions. As corrections. Space folded, not violently, but precisely, compressing ships into dimensions they were never designed to occupy. Some were stretched until molecular bonds failed. Others were shunted sideways into null-time pockets, removed from the universe so cleanly that not even radiation escaped. To the sensors, it looked like disappearance. To the humans, it was containment. Further analysis revealed something even more disturbing. These systems were not centrally controlled. There was no command signal from Earth. No real-time targeting. The defense network operated autonomously, guided by layered artificial intelligences bound by rigid ethical constraints. One captured data fragment, snatched from a collapsing subspace echo, contained a human doctrinal term, crudely translated. Fail deadly perimeter. The doctrine was simple. Elegant. Terrifying. Humanity did not believe in forward defense. Fleets could be destroyed. Shields could fail. Weapons could be matched. But physics, engineered physics, could not be negotiated with or intimidated. The Sol system itself was the weapon. Every corridor, every stable orbit, every safe approach had been mapped and encoded. Human ships followed these paths automatically, their navigation systems synchronized to the hidden architecture. Anything else, anything foreign, unsynchronized, and aggressive, was treated as an error. And errors were removed. The Coalition commanders realized why Earth had never displayed its military strength. Why its fleets seemed small. Why its shipyards appeared underutilized. Humanity had never planned to fight a war in space. They had planned to end wars at the border. Historical archives, long ignored, suddenly made sense. Humanity's early conflicts, their obsession with deterrence, their fixation on rules of engagement. Even their reluctance to fire first. This was not mercy. It was control. The system gave intruders every opportunity to leave. It did not chase. It did not punish hesitation. It only responded once a choice had been made. And once that choice crossed the line, the outcome was irreversible. One Coalition admiral summarized the revelation in a private transmission, his voice stripped of arrogance. We didn't invade a planet. We invaded a philosophy. As more ships vanished, cleanly, silently, the remaining commanders understood the final, horrifying truth of Earth's defense doctrine. Humanity had designed Sol so that peaceful visitors would never even notice the trap. Only invaders ever learned it existed. By the time the Coalition fleet accepted that Sol itself was the weapon, it was already too late to adapt. Formations that had once symbolized overwhelming power now broke apart under the pressure of fear and confusion. Command hierarchies fragmented as species with different survival instincts issued conflicting orders: advance, hold, retreat, all at once. The defense architecture responded to none of them directly. It did not need to. As vessels altered course, the invisible boundaries shifted, not in position, but in relevance. Safe corridors narrowed. Margins for error collapsed to nothing. A carrier that drifted half a degree off vector vanished without ceremony, its escorts spared only because they had not yet committed to the same maneuver. Coalition engineers finally isolated the most chilling variable of all. The system was learning. Each disappearance refined the Sol Defense Network's predictive models. It was not reacting, it was anticipating. Human artificial intelligences, distributed across moons, deep space relays, and quantum substrates buried inside the star itself, were updating probability matrices in real time. The invaders' tactics became liabilities the moment they were conceived. An attempt at coordinated fleet action triggered cascading failures. When the command node issued a synchronized advance order, hundreds of ships registered identical hostile intent vectors. The defense network classified them as a single threat cluster. The result was instantaneous. Space along their projected path collapsed into a lattice of null zones. Entire wings of ships slid out of existence as if erased by a cosmic editor. No screams. No debris. No survivors. The remainder recoiled instinctively, some accelerating, others braking hard. The architecture responded with equal indifference. Vessels attempting to flee without clearing their intent flags were removed just as efficiently as those pressing forward. Then came the final refinement. Coalition scientists detected a new layer activating, one they had missed entirely. The defense network began sorting ships not just by intent, but by behavioral consistency. Vessels that hesitated, oscillated between orders, or transmitted conflicting command data were flagged as unstable. Unstable meant unpredictable. Unpredictable meant dangerous. They vanished next. The surviving commanders finally understood why Earth had allowed the fleet to enter so deeply into Sol space. Why there had been no early demonstration of power. Why the warning had come before any losses. This was not a trap designed to snap shut immediately. It was a net designed to tighten gradually, forcing invaders to condemn themselves through their own decisions. Humanity was not destroying the fleet. The fleet was selecting itself for destruction. Amid the chaos, 13 ships received something no others did. Clearance. Without explanation, their navigation systems updated. New vectors appeared, clean, stable paths cutting straight through the warped physics of Sol. Jump drives that had been locked for hours suddenly responded, spinning up without resistance. Confusion turned to disbelief. These ships had done one thing differently. They had ceased all aggressive posturing. Weapons powered down. Command AI switched to passive compliance modes. No threats. No maneuvers. Just waiting. The Sol architecture acknowledged the change. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth spoke again, not to the fleet, but to the system itself. A single synchronization pulse rippled through space, aligning the escape corridors with the 13 compliant vessels. The rest of the armada had no such path. As the chosen ships fled, their commanders watched the remainder of the invasion force vanish behind them, one by one, then dozens at a time, until the tactical displays showed nothing but empty space and unreadable physics. Later, in debriefings that would shake the galaxy, one survivor would describe the moment with perfect clarity. We weren't defeated. We were filtered. And in the Sol system, the trap finished closing. Not with violence, but with finality. The transmission did not arrive with fanfare. There was no dramatic override of channels, no seizure of coalition command frequencies. Instead, the message appeared softly, threading itself into every remaining communication band with perfect synchronization, as if the Sol system itself had decided it was time to speak. The 13 surviving ships received it first. A calm human voice filled their bridges, unaccented and deliberately neutral, translated flawlessly into dozens of coalition languages. This is the United Earth Directorate. Hostile activity within the Sol system has ceased. Your vessels have been granted conditional withdrawal. No celebration followed. No relief. Only stunned silence. The message continued, methodical and precise. You were warned upon entry. You were given time to depart. You chose to advance. The human speaker did not raise their voice. There was no anger in the words, only a statement of record, as if reading from a ledger already closed. Humanity does not seek territory beyond Sol. We do not preemptively strike. We do not fire first. As the survivors listened, data streams accompanied the transmission, logs, timestamps, navigational records. Each vanished ship was accounted for, its final hostile decision marked clearly. The implication was unavoidable. Nothing had been arbitrary. Our defense doctrine is simple, the voice continued. Intent defines outcome. The message broadened, now broadcast on an open galactic channel. Every listening civilization, every military analyst, every political authority, received it simultaneously. We engineered Sol as a sanctuary, not a fortress. Peaceful traffic is invisible to our defenses. Trade, diplomacy, and exploration pass unimpeded. Images accompanied the words, human vessels sharing orbital space with alien traders, joint research platforms, open transit corridors that had existed for decades without incident. Then came the line that would be replayed across the galaxy for centuries. The moment a fleet resolves to conquer this system, the system resolves to remove it. One of the surviving coalition admirals attempted to respond, to argue, to plead, to demand an explanation for the scale of the loss. The human voice interrupted gently. This was not punishment. A pause. Long enough to feel intentional. This was enforcement. The humans explained their restraint at last. They had watched the coalition expand for generations. They had observed the pattern, powerful alliances consuming weaker systems under the banner of order. Humanity had chosen isolation not out of fear, but out of preparation. Your civilizations believe wars are fought by fleets, the voice said. Ours taught us that wars are decided by rules. The transmission ended with a final clarification, directed squarely at the 13 fleeing ships. You were permitted to leave because you stopped trying to win. Remember that. The message terminated. The escape corridors remained stable. Behind the survivors, Sol space fell silent once more, no debris, no wreckage, no evidence that one of the largest invasion fleets in galactic history had ever existed. Only absence. And in that absence, the galaxy began to understand something it had never considered before. Humanity did not threaten the stars. Humanity regulated them. The 13 ships did not return as victors. They returned as evidence. When the battered remnants of the invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace into coalition territory, automated defense networks locked onto them instantly. Distress codes, priority clearance signals, and emergency identifiers flooded the relays. Word spread faster than any official channel could contain it. Only 13. Out of 7,300. Emergency assemblies were convened within hours. The surviving commanders were summoned, not as heroes, not even as failures, but as witnesses. Their ships were quarantined, their crews isolated, their data cores seized and copied 1,000 times over. The galaxy needed to know what had gone wrong. The testimonies began with disbelief. Senior admirals described a system with no visible defenses, no hostile fleets, no warning shots. They spoke of ships vanishing without explosions, of navigation systems rebelling against physics itself. Engineers presented sensor logs showing clean gaps in space-time where mass should have existed. There was no sign of battle damage. That disturbed the analysts more than any wreckage could have. Coalition scientists replayed the data frame by frame. Every disappearance correlated not with weapon discharge, but with decision points, moments when ships committed to aggressive maneuvers, powered weapons, or aligned for bombardment. One physicist summarized the finding bluntly. Sol does not destroy ships. It rejects them. When asked why their own vessels were spared, the survivors offered the same answer, again and again. They had stopped. Not retreated in panic. Not attempted deception. They had powered down weapons, halted all maneuvers, and waited. Humanity's system had noticed. The psychological impact rippled outward. Coalition military academies halted classes. Strategic simulations were rerun with updated parameters and failed catastrophically. No conventional fleet doctrine could survive in a system that did not fight back, but instead filtered intent. Political consequences followed swiftly. Several member species demanded immediate withdrawal from Coalition space bordering Sol. Others called for sanctions, apologies, or emergency treaties. A few voices, quiet but terrified, suggested the unthinkable. What if humanity had not stopped at 13? What if Sol's architecture extended beyond its star system? The most chilling moment came when a junior analyst asked a simple question during a closed session. Why did humans let anyone escape? The answer, drawn from the survivors' logs, was unanimous. Because the galaxy needed to learn. The 13 ships were not survivors by accident. They were carriers of testimony, of fear, of understanding. Humanity had allowed them to leave not as mercy, but as communication. Within days, galactic star charts updated. Sol was no longer marked as a neutral system. It was flagged with a new classification, one that had never existed before. Regulated space. The survivors were dismissed from service quietly. No court-martials. No punishment severe enough to match the scale of the disaster. Their role was finished. They had delivered the message. And across the galaxy, in war rooms and council chambers alike, a single lesson settled into collective memory. You could fight empires. You could outgun fleets. But you could not negotiate with a species that had turned intent into law. Humanity had not declared war. Humanity had declared terms. The message was not broadcast in anger. It arrived weeks later, after investigations, testimonies, and frantic political recalculations had already begun to fracture the Galactic Coalition from within. Humanity waited, not to intimidate, but to ensure that the galaxy was finally ready to listen. Then, without warning, the signal appeared. Every registered diplomatic channel received it simultaneously. Civilian relays. Military networks. Academic archives. Even independent traders drifting between stars found their comms briefly overridden by a transmission that carried no encryption and no signature threat. A simple identifier preceded the message. United Earth Directorate, Open Declaration. A human figure appeared, unarmed, seated, framed not by flags or symbols of power, but by a view of Earth itself. Blue oceans. White cloud bands. A living world. The speaker's tone was calm, deliberate. We have heard your debates. We have read your accusations. We have considered your fears. The human did not deny what had happened. Yes. 7,300 vessels entered the Sol system with hostile intent. Yes. 13 were permitted to leave. A pause followed, long enough for the weight of the numbers to settle. This was not an act of vengeance. The message clarified what the galaxy had misunderstood for generations. Humanity had not remained neutral because it was weak. It had remained neutral because it had learned, early and painfully, that wars of dominance never truly ended. Empires rose, consumed, collapsed, and left scars that lasted longer than any victory. We chose a different solution, the speaker said. We removed ourselves from the cycle. Sol was declared, formally and irrevocably, a protected system. Not closed. Not forbidden. Open to trade, diplomacy, science, and shared exploration, under one unbreakable condition. No military force may enter Sol without invitation. The human leaned forward slightly. This is not a threat. It is a boundary. Humanity extended offers instead of ultimatums. Joint research initiatives. Open transit accords. Conflict mediation frameworks. A chance for civilizations to resolve disputes without fleets and annihilation. We will not expand our borders, the message continued. But we will enforce them. Then came the line that reshaped galactic policy overnight. If you come in peace, you will never notice our defenses. If you come in conquest, you will never leave. The transmission ended without flourish. No call to arms. No declaration of superiority. Just silence. Across the galaxy, militaries revised doctrines. Councils postponed invasions. Ambitious empires recalculated the cost of aggression, not in ships or soldiers, but in existence itself. And in the Sol system, Earth continued to turn beneath its star, unchanged, unbowed, and unchallenged. Humanity had not claimed the galaxy. It had simply reminded it of a truth long forgotten. Peace is not the absence of power. Peace is power restrained. History did not remember the invasion as a battle. There were no wreckage fields to study. No heroic last stands to memorialize. No worlds left burning in its wake. The largest armada ever assembled by the Galactic Coalition had not been defeated, it had been removed, so completely that future generations would argue whether it had ever truly existed at all. Only 13 ships proved otherwise. They were preserved, eventually, sealed within vacuum chambers, their hulls still bearing no scars, no weapon marks, no evidence of combat. Students and admirals alike walked their corridors in silence, struggling to reconcile the absence of damage with the absence of thousands of companions. Military academies rewrote their core doctrines. Where once the first lesson had been force projection, a new principle replaced it. Intent precedes outcome. Galactic star charts changed as well. The Sol system was no longer marked by political borders or alliance colors. Instead, it bore a single, stark designation recognized by every major power. Regulated space, no hostile entry. No fleet tested that warning. Not because they feared human weapons, but because they finally understood what humanity had built. You could prepare for fleets. You could counter shields. You could outgun empires. You could not fight a system that had turned war itself into an administrative error. Humanity never followed up with expansion. Never demanded reparations. Never sought tribute. Earth continued to trade, to explore, to invite cooperation on its own terms. And that, more than the disappearance of 7,287 ships, terrified the galaxy. Because the greatest predators were not those who conquered the stars, but those who learned how to make conquest obsolete, and then chose to stay home. Only 13 ships returned from Sol. That was enough. The galaxy never forgot the lesson.